Well, hello everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Self-Publishing Insiders from draft to digital. Now, this is going to be an interesting episode, and I compel you, the power of my will compels you to pay close attention to our guest today, Suzette Martinez Standring. I think I got that right, Suzette, right? Okay. Suzette, welcome to the show.
Lovely to be here. Really excited.
Now, we're joined also by Jim Asvito, who works with me for public relations at Draft to Digital. Welcome, Jim.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Kevin. Hello, Suzette.
Now, today is this is an interesting topic, Suzette, and this is one that I actually when I was talking to Jim about all of this. This is something I followed closely, read a lot about, studied a lot about. So I'm very interested to hear your perspective on this. But we're talking about I'm going to read the actual title because it's easier than making stuff up. Self-hypnosis to unlock creativity. That is an interesting concept. So first of all, what do you mean by self-hypnosis when you say that?
Well, I was certified in hypnotherapy back in 1990, not to become a practitioner, but because I was fascinated with the power of the mind. How does that work? And during my certification process, I realized that there was a direct correlation to writing. And it's something that I applied to my own career later on. And the idea is that when you are reading a great book, you are in a self-hypnotic trance, right?
Yeah.
You're involved, you're in that experience, you know where you are, but you're so immersed in that scene. So the same thing happens when you reach the subconscious through relaxation. Guided imagery, self-hypnosis, to me, they're all synonyms.
Yeah.
And it allows you to really allow a story to develop in your subconscious, and you get in touch with the feelings, the emotions that carry that story forward. And you can actually gain novel insights into the story if you allow it to come to you. So that's basically how it has worked for me and for the people that I've taught.
It sounds similar to what people describe as the flow state. Is that kind of the same idea?
Yes. Yes, it is. It's a condition, an experience that you can pretty much call up on demand simply by putting yourself in a relaxed state, which is sometimes harder than it sounds.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Suzette, is there a difference between, say, mindfulness and hypnosis? And is there like an East versus West? I don't know. Is it a paradigm or an ideology between the two?
I think mindfulness, self-hypnosis, all of that is in the same realm.
Okay.
When you're being mindful, you're just being more aware of what's going on and you're being the observer. But when you are in let's say a guided imagery trance or relaxation, you're purposely putting yourself into a mindset of nothingness. And it sounds crazy, but it comes to you. You know, whatever it is that you're mulling over or a memory that you want to write about, you're just the observer. And it's really a wonderful way to mine details, emotions, and a storyline if you're creating fiction or if you're doing memoir.
Yeah. So where do you think that comes from? Like, where is that coming from within us?
Well, when I was getting certified in hypnotherapy, I learned that there are two mindsets, the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is where all storytelling comes from. Yeah. The subconscious mind is where where it speaks in the language of pictures and emotions. Whereas the conscious mind is all about data, information, analysis. For example, the people who are attending this podcast right now are in their conscious mind because they want to learn something. They want to say, well, does this resonate with me? Does this seem true? Is it possible? How do you do it? Why would we do it? But the subconscious mind is all about feelings and pictures. That's why when you go into, let's say, a self-hypnosis or a guided imagery mindset, pictures reveal, they're symbolic, or they reveal to you deeper insights. And the subconscious mind can't be argued with or debated. It simply feels what it feels. And the
Yeah,
subconscious is
that's an
what
awful lot
controls
like
our
my
health.
wife. Sorry.
That is
Lucky you.
I interrupted you. I'm sorry. With my
No.
crass joke that I'll suffer for later.
A couple
Oh,
of
I
things you
don't
said
know.
there like piqued my interest. I mean, it's all piquing my interest really, but you mentioned the how and the why, and so I'm really curious as to why does this work, and then from there, how does it work? Like,
How do you
why
do
do
it
Well,
intentionally? That's the real question. Like,
well, for
yeah, I'm
example,
thinking we'll get to the yeah.
okay, so how it works is because the conscious mind works differently from the subconscious mind,
Uh-huh.
and the way you access the subconscious mind is through relaxation.
Okay.
And when you're relaxed, I know it sounds crazy,
Mm.
but really novel insights will come to you. You're not consciously trying to create a story. You're just maybe thinking about a memory. Like, let's, and I do this a lot in the classes that I've given. Think about something you want to write about,
Mhm.
and people will automatically think of a memory. And consciously, they're creating a storyline. They're trying to figure things out. But when they reach that relaxed state of mind, they can just observe it and
yeah,
feel what they feel, what comes up when they're looking at that in their mind. And that guides them toward a story. And oftentimes like a prism, not a
Uh-huh.
prison, will, an
like a
aspect
prison. All
like
right.
a prism, an aspect will come up, something
Mhm.
they've never considered before, a fresh
Yeah.
angle, and they and it's like a revelation in some ways. And isn't that what we're trying to give our readers? Something
Yeah.
fresh, something novel,
Uh,
something unique and authentic to the author.
yeah. There's a saying, and I'm gonna butcher it, but let's try to improvise it. But that if the author feels it on the page, the reader will feel it when they read it. Something along those lines. Is that kind of that's a similar idea? I would imagine that's what you're going for then. Like if you're getting lost in the story while you're writing it and it's coming out of that deeper part of yourself, that's the goal, right?
Yes, you're so right, Kevin. And I've written in the past, if you feel it, you can convey it. I think so
Yeah.
many writers write from a distance. They
Mhm.
start to get all intellectual about it and analytical about it. But
Yeah.
really, what you're trying to engage everyone with is a story, an
Yeah.
authentic, vulnerable piece that that reveals
Yeah.
something new.
Yeah. So I'm a pantser. I don't plot or outline. I just write by the seat of my pants, right? And I this is how I do it. I mean, if you were asked me to explain it, I can't actually explain it, but this is how it's working. It's coming from that part of me. But does that also apply? Like if I were a plotter, am I being too technical? I'm not trying to drag down plotters here, but
We
is
love
this
plotters. We love
we love
plotters.
plotters. How do you organize something that's coming out of your subconscious?
Okay, well, first of all, I agree with you. It's a big world. There's room for all of us.
That's
I tend
right.
to be a pantser also. I have a general idea of things, but I often use self-hypnosis or a meditative mindset, to look at something. After when I take people on this journey, I take them through it and then I tell them right afterwards, don't write a story. Simply
Yeah.
write down everything that you felt and saw and observed on a page. It's like you go down into a mine and you're carrying that wheelbarrow full of stuff up to the surface and you're just
Mhm.
dumping it on the ground and you're taking inventory. You're not trying to create anything. It's
Mm.
like, and I often tell them, it's like a dream. Uh, you know how dreams are so vivid when you wake up and you think about something 20 minutes later, you can't remember it.
Yeah.
Right.
Your
Yes.
subconscious is speaking to you. It's showing something to you that can
Yeah.
help you learn about yourself. You learn about yourself, you feel it, you can share it with someone else. They're learning something about themselves. So that's how whether you're a plotter or a pantser, everyone can just take down notes really fast as it feels, as it's, the fresh feeling. And then you sort through it later on. And with time, like a day or two, sometimes in a week, you start to realize something, and it really aids you in your writing.
And when you say self-hypnosis, like what are we really talking about here? Like, what's the method? Like, what should we be doing? Like, how do I self-hypnotize myself to get into that headspace? Is it about music? Is it about, what would you recommend?
Okay. Well,
try to drill down to the
no,
the
you're
stuff.
absolutely right.
Maybe I should let
How
my
do we do it?
subconscious answer it.
No, you know what? I think for those people who meditate regularly, they're already doing it. They're already doing it. When you daydream, you're doing it. How do you reach that daydream state? Like where you're just sitting there and something's coming to you. That's exactly what it feels like. For me, when I first took hypnotherapy out of my own curiosity, I was convinced I could never be hypnotized. I was convinced of it. My mind is so active.
Yeah.
I can't seem to ever turn it off. But what I discovered, what I experienced is that when someone takes me through a guided imagery and there's no work on my part, no struggle, all I have to do is listen to their voice and follow the directions, as it were. It led me to a very physical state of peace and calm. And it's a physical sensation. And once you reach that, you know exactly how to get back to it because you felt it. I always thought meditation was a cruel hoax. I would close my eyes, my mind would race, I can't relax. But I think when you're taken through it, it becomes easy, and then you can do it yourself.
That's so interesting. So do you think everybody has the capability to be hypnotized or to self-hypnotize?
Yes, absolutely. Everyone can reach some level of trance, whether it's light or heavy. And I'm going to tell you something that I really discovered during my certification course. A lot depends on the rapport and the trust that you have in the practitioner. Like sometimes, you could probably find people on YouTube, or maybe a hypnotist. I've had people say to me, I tried it. I didn't go anywhere with it, because your subconscious is at play, and your subconscious knows what it wants. And if it does not feel comfortable with that particular person, or there's something being said that it doesn't feel good about, it will put up a resistance, and you'll be able to relax a little bit. But a lot of it has to depend on your rapport and trust of the practitioner. And a lot of it also has to do with yourself, giving permission to yourself to relax. If I were to work with, let's say, take you through a guided imagery, and you're secretly thinking, no way, you're not going to be able to do it. I can't, because your resistance will stop that from happening. So it depends on, it's a two-way street.
I remember watching an interview with, I assume he was a famous hypnotist. I didn't know him personally or anything, but I remember him saying something that always stuck with me, was that when people sort of proudly proclaim that they can't be hypnotized, he always felt sorry for them, because it wasn't necessarily something to brag about that you couldn't do this. It was actually, you're blocking yourself from an experience that could be very beneficial to you.
Right. That's like saying, no one can ever help me meditate. I can't meditate, like a badge of honor. And yet there's so much to be mined, and so many benefits from that relaxation. Your subconscious controls your health.
And science backs it all up.
Yes, it's all science, really.
Yeah.
It's just that I realized I could apply it to writing And maybe now there are a lot of people who maybe do that kind of thing. I don't know, but I know that when I started doing it, I was, one of the only people taking people through writers through guided imagery to get to the heart of their stories. But so there might be other people now.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure.
Yeah.
This is all over the place now. When you go on YouTube, like every other channel talks about this kind of thing.
Right.
Is this similar to or related to like automatic writing? Is that something similar to this?
I would not say that.
Okay.
I would not say that. I mean, isn't automatic writing where you're basically channeling?
Well, I think there are people who that's what they're talking about. I always thought of it as being more, I'm drawing from my subconscious and I'm writing, I'm letting that do the writing. But yeah, I could be wrong about that. I haven't looked that closely at it.
I think there's a parallel. I think there's a parallel, Kevin, and I'll give you an example. I'm writing a novel right now based on my grandmother who had children from a Catholic priest in the Philippines at the turn of the century, right?
I remember you telling me about this.
And I had no other facts except that, and that is going to be the skeleton on which I hang the meat on. Now, can you imagine? I know nothing about their relationship. I don't know how exactly that happened in such a Catholic country, but it was quite the love affair in the lore of my family. So here's the deal. I put myself into a meditative mindset and I imagine speaking to my grandmother or my grandfather, and I say to them, so what do you want me to tell people? How did this come about? And I just put myself, and I start to imagine a conversation that goes on. It's almost like, I'm not saying it's a real authentic conversation, but it is like an inspiration, a writing inspiration. I imagine what was the dialogue? I'm creating dialogue, realistic dialogue that could help the reader understand how they developed a relationship. And I do that a lot. Is that automatic writing? Well, I can honestly say it comes a lot more naturally and easily than if I were to try and, all right, now he's going to say this, and I would think she'd respond with that.
That's, to me, that's what happens with dialogue. So I have two characters talking. I don't plan out. I don't try to plan out in advance. Like he's going to say this and then she'll say that. It's literally happening in front of me on the page. So I have to, I can imagine that that's the origin of that idea of channeling, we have this innate ability to sort of compartmentalize our minds to a degree and have conversations with ourselves that have answers that we don't expect. I do it all the time, actually. You got to be careful about saying this kind of thing out loud because
I know. I was just thinking
it could lead to repercussions.
But everybody has their own unique process.
Right.
And it all comes to the same thing. We're all trying to create stories that engage our readers. And however we get there,
Is there, and not to get all woo-woo, but is there a spiritual element to hypnosis? Because if you think about some best-selling authors and even some like platinum selling musicians, they say, hey man, like I didn't write that song or I didn't write that book. It kind of came to me. I was just like this conduit that wrote it all down. It just, once it came to me, it just flowed out. So,
Jim, that's a really good question. And what I would say to that is there a spiritual aspect to it? Well, is there a spiritual aspect to mindfulness? Yes, there is. And so therefore, I think of it, self-hypnosis, meditation, mindfulness, it's all on the same shelf to me. And this is the hard part, I think, for a lot of writers. We're so convinced and conditioned to believe that we have to create everything and we have to super edit, overanalyze and over edit our work to make it perfect.
Totally.
But if you can just let go, if you could just let go and let your subconscious show you what it wants to tell you.
Yeah, the conscious mind is overrated.
I think so.
all the bad decisions I ever made came from the conscious mind anyway. So
right. Us, we're not in touch with our hearts anymore,
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the best kind of writing, where you feel that the writer is really coming from a place of heart and personal truth.
Yeah. That's very so. Walk us through when you sit down to write and you're using these methods. What is your environment like? What do you do to get yourself into this headspace?
Okay, first of all, I'm so used to it that I can do it at the drop of a dime anywhere.
Okay.
And I think many people, who are used to meditating or start to get into this practice can do it also. However, I'll give you a perfect example of how I used it.
All right.
I had to write a column about the month of genealogy. All right. And I decided to write about my half sister, who was 8 years older than me. And I had not seen her since I was 8 years old, because my father, our father, remarried my mom, and he had full custody of her up until she was 14 and wanted to go back to her own mother, whom he hated, and I never saw her again. So for genealogy month, I was looking for her, found her through her obituary. Now, so I started to write this story at this column, and I remember thinking, what is the obvious takeaway for the reader? The obvious takeaway is lost time, too bad, we didn't have a relationship, we missed it. But to me, that's pretty trite. Anybody could come up with that. And I feel like my job is I have to come up with a novel insight. I actually put myself in this kind of meditative mindset, and I saw that whole thing happening with my father and my sister and her and him throwing her out of the house when she came to visit at age 18 to tell him that she had a son and she was getting married. And he said, "You're just like your mother. You're like a prostitute. Get out." And I never saw her again. And so to me, when I put myself in this mindset, the takeaway that I came up with, and it came easily to me, was that everywhere there are half siblings or family members who have cut ties and have not developed relationships because of feuds between exes, between their parents. And we unconsciously have a loyalty to them, and we take on their rejection of others for no reason, no hurt to us, only because we have this kind of unconscious loyalty. And that was the takeaway in my column. And I felt that it was, and I think that that's the kind of fresh insight that can come if you allow yourself just to surrender and let go.
Yeah, that's true. That's tough though. Like surrender and let go is
Dorothy.
That's an easy thing to say and a hard thing to do. Yes, surrender, Dorothy. But so what's your advice on, how do we get to that stage? Like, because my head gets in the way of practically everything, and so look how big it is. So how do I get out of that?
It has a
lot of knowledge, mostly useless, but it's all in there. But how do I get past that part of myself and relax enough or let go enough that my subconscious is taking over and doing the job?
Well, I think that for me, it was extremely helpful when someone took me through a guided imagery. That was really helpful to me. It actually changed my life in a lot of ways. And it broke down the barrier that it's not possible. I'm just too active in my head. So I guess I would suggest that, someone go through, maybe go on YouTube and listen to a meditation, try and get into that practice, maybe at another time I could give a show and take everyone through the experience if you wanted to.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Do you know, does the person know when they've reached that sort of threshold when you're in that state?
They will know. And I'll tell you why, because feeling that level of relaxation is physical. It's not a matter of like, well, I guess I'm quiet. No, you no longer feel your arms or your legs. Your body becomes very heavy. You don't even know where your hands are anymore. But up here, you're very alert. You're not like a zombie. You're totally aware. You know exactly where you are. You just don't care.
It sounds like flow state, like perfect flow state.
It
If
is.
anybody's ever reached that before, it is that feeling of I'm doing what I love. I'm here, but I'm just in it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And when I take people through it, I let them savor that experience of quote nothingness
Mm-hmm.
so that they can really feel it as a
Yeah.
physical sensation. Then they know when they go back to it, they know what the physical feeling feels like, and they can go right back to it because it's like you've experienced it. You know what
Yeah.
you're looking for.
Yeah.
And you're saying this improves with practice, right? The more you do
Yes.
this.
But
Yeah.
I have to tell you, when I went through it the first time, second time, it was so profound to me, and it didn't take a long time to be able to return to that state. There's
Oh,
something about the physicality
yeah.
of the sensation,
Yeah.
that
Well, and there can be
That-
triggers. For example, I mean, in the early days when I was writing for media, I had what I called my writer's cap. It was this old Yankees baseball cap, and anytime I put that on, I knew that I had to write something. And so that put me immediately in that headspace. So I imagine it's probably similar. I mean, you could probably do something similar. Now it's, as soon as this keyboard is in front of me, I know it's writing time, or if I've got the camera on, I know it's go time. So, there are all kinds of things that you can use as little icons to trigger that experience. Would you agree, or is that outside?
You're right on. You are right on, Kevin. When I take people through that relaxation exercise, I let them savor that experience, and I actually suggest to them that there is a symbol that comes to them. It could be a word
Oh,
or a picture or whatever, a symbol. Think about that symbol of how this feels right now, and
yeah.
then follow the place in your body where you feel most relaxed. Sometimes it's in their hands, sometimes it's in their heart or their stomach, their head, wherever. It could
Yes.
be anywhere. And I have them put that symbol into that physical place and then suggest that they can come back to it at any time.
Ah,
You
it's
know,
like a
for me, I
it's
can
like a
do it very
desktop icon for your subconscious.
When you mentioned physicality, I'm like, oh, that sounds like the key, because I think for a lot of beginning meditators, of which I would include myself in that, it's like you're trying to find this inner peace and to kind of shut down all the voices in your head. But I felt like I'm waiting for something to happen. But it sounds like with hypnosis, you kind of know there's a physicality to it where you've kind of arrived in this state.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. And then you just put out
Mm-hmm.
one question, like for me, when I go into the state and I want to know what would my grandfather have said,
Yeah.
or what would my grandmother say, then I it's like I imagine talking to them and saying, what do you want me to tell people? And then I imagine them, and then I imagine, okay, here's the situation, and they're talking to each other.
So
And
interesting.
I can see that, and I could see the appeal of them to each other physically. And maybe she's very, engaging,
Mm-hmm.
and she likes his seriousness or whatever, but it comes.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned questions. Speaking of questions, that's my segue. We've had a couple of comments and questions. Let's take a look at some. First, Judith. Judith says, I frequently use meditation when I get stuck in my writing. Sounds like a pretty good use for it. That leads to a question though. So is this a cure for writer's block?
I think it's a very good remedy for writer's block. And I'm not going to say writer's block will forever disappear, but it's a great remedy for it.
Yeah.
And you have to also say, remember, your subconscious mind is all about feeling and pictures, right? And your conscious mind is probably going to still try to get in there going, you're wasting time. You shouldn't be doing this. Why are you relaxing? Get to it. Nothing is happening. You got to be aware that is going to happen, and that maybe you won't get your inspiration at that moment. Maybe it'll come later on while you're eating lunch. You'll have an aha or an epiphany tomorrow.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Problem solving, automatic problem solving.
Yes.
LFX Media asks, is this something totally in the creative realm, or will your conscious allow similar scenarios to exist like an image you saw elsewhere but want to scale up? I don't. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think so.
Yeah.
You know, we all look at things very differently, right? You could look at a photo or a picture or something in nature, and it will remind you of something else,
Yeah.
something more insightful, something deep. So yeah, I think it can be. It's a definite tool. The conscious and the subconscious mind are not mutually exclusive. It's
Yeah.
really nice when they can kind of come together, where you are going to be using your conscious mind for good writing techniques, things that you've learned, and the subconscious as a place of inspiration,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. How do we get these two kids talking more though? Like, how do I get my conscious mind and subconscious mind to be more in sync with each other, so that I'm always in that state of self-hypnosis?
Well, I think number one, one can try to become more in touch with their subconscious. I think we're all really super in with our conscious mind, which
Yeah.
is why we have that kind of gerbil in a bathtub on fire kind of
Right.
negativity in our head, you know? So number one, I think we have to give ourselves permission and to trust ourselves. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Because the subconscious is all about the symbolism, intuition, feelings, and we often negate how we feel because we think that's not very smart, that's not very intellectual, that won't be accepted. I mean, I went out on a limb. I taught a class at Stanford recently on Zoom, and they wanted me to talk about opinion writing. And I basically said, I want to take everybody through a guided imagery exercise. I want them to experience it for themselves so that they can write a more insightful opinion. That was going out on a limb. This is Stanford, you know, but it worked.
Yeah.
And the instructor really got something out of it personally. She said she was going to approach her own op-ed very differently.
Stanford. I just imagine everybody pulling out like a graphing calculator and a slide rule. All right, opinions. Okay. Sorry, I have an outdated idea of Stanford, I think. Now Heather has snuck in a twofer, so let's get.
Okay.
She's got two comments, not questions. We'll see where these lead. I use meditation for relaxation, but also for writing inspiration. The practice of making art can be meditation. I think that's true.
I totally think that's true.
That's the only meditation I know how to do, actually.
Yes. And, you know, I have actually spoken to other writers who will doodle or draw for a while or paint something and before they actually start writing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I've lost track. And so I now have to loop back. So Jim, did you have any other questions or things maybe I haven't hit on yet?
Well, no, that's fine. I was just going to tell Suzette, like, for the longest time, let me back up a little bit and say, when I was kind of refreshing my memory on your background, because, you know, for those who don't know, Suzette's she's a newspaper columnist. She's an author. She presents workshops and she's a public speaker. She does stand-up comedy sometimes.
Nice.
Sashayer into stand-up comedy.
But I didn't realize, Suzette, that you were certified in hypnotherapy like way before your columnist writing even began. So you've been doing this a long time.
Yes. And I took it, like I told you, out of curiosity, because I have a tremendous interest in holistic practices. I'm also a Reiki practitioner, but it's because I want to understand when your conscious mind says, you can't suggest somebody stop smoking and then they do, but then they do through hypnosis. How the heck did that work?
Right.
You know,
so many use cases for hypnosis. And I have to admit that, you know, I was one of the guys who was kind of skeptical when it came to hypnosis, because I think we're so used to seeing these images of like the carnival hypnotist with the watch and turning people into chickens in movies and just silly stuff like that, so that we don't pay as much attention to the real world applications and how useful it can truly be.
And there is a big difference between therapeutic
Oh,
hypnosis, like
absolutely.
what I'm applying, and
Hmm.
entertainment hypnosis. But here's
Yeah.
something that I did learn about that.
Okay.
Stage hypnotists are very practiced in reading people,
Yeah.
and they cannot make you do anything you don't want to do. But if you're open to getting up on a table and clucking like a chicken, all hypnosis does is remove the inhibitions and allows you to do that. And you would
Okay.
have done it anyway
Yes.
if given half the chance. And
This
that's
is
how that
why
works.
I
Or a few
want
drinks.
to, yeah, I want to white label my own brand of bourbon called Hypnosis Bourbon, because that's how I remove my inhibitions.
Well,
Uh,
to tag on top of that, then if someone is truly interested in finding someone like yourself, who may be certified in the practice, where should they start their search?
Well, I honestly don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I would say that if they want to explore feeling, going through meditation or
Yep.
whatever, anybody can be on YouTube, and I think I
yeah.
actually did do a hypnosis YouTube video taking
Hmm.
people through it, and I can send you the link later on if you want to share that. But I don't really know. I know that, I've done it, and there's, like you say, Kevin, it's everywhere
Yeah,
now,
sure.
you know.
Yeah.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just as long as people know the difference between the
I
two.
don't
Yeah.
know that regular hypnotherapists really apply this to writing,
Sure.
you
Yeah.
know. I know that one time I gave this program at the Irma Bombeck Writers Workshop to 350 people. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not sure this is going to work, but it did. And the one thing I will also say is that your subconscious is very powerful and self-protective. It will not
Yeah.
allow you to deal with anything you're not ready to deal with. But if
Yeah.
something comes up, it might be your inner self saying, I think you're ready to write about
Okay.
this,
Oh, that's interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's interesting. As using it as a kind of gauge to see if you're ready to confront something or ready to deal with it.
Hmm.
Mhm. Somebody
Yeah.
did come up to me at the conference and said she went upstairs to write about a trauma that happened to her in her childhood, and it was the first time she's ever addressed it, and she wrote for a long time upstairs.
Yeah.
So she
Yeah.
was ready.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you use this as a means of getting to that place, like getting ready to talk about something?
Yes, because I think that a lot of writers have very deep kind of experiences that they want to share, but maybe they're a
Yeah.
little afraid.
Hmm.
And so if you get into a meditation state and ask yourself, you know, or go back to a memory. If
Yeah.
it all comes flooding out
Hmm.
and there's all these insights, then your subconscious is, taking you by the hand and saying, look, there's all this stuff. It's okay. Write about it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But if you're running into a block, I can't even see it. I can't remember. Maybe your subconscious is saying, not ready yet.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a great
And that's a
point.
good point. Resistance is usually a signal all on its own. Like if you're feeling reluctant about something, it may be your subconscious telling you back off, or I feel like in my daily life, I feel like I get a lot of little synchronicities and clues and things
Mhm.
that kind of guide me, guideposts for making decisions and that sort of thing. And that has to be related. I mean, that has to be within the same vein, or am I completely off base?
Oh, no. I read the signs too. I'm constantly looking for signs. I often
Yeah.
tell my higher power, God, hey, can you make it clear I'm not that smart?
Yes.
Send me a
Yes.
sign,
Yeah. He's well aware that I'm not that smart. Yes. But I feel like even if you, it sounds like you do as well, but I mean, I approach this from a spiritual point of view, but even if you weren't spiritual about it, your subconscious tends to look for what other language would it have besides symbolism and coincidence, right? So sorry,
No,
it looked
no.
like you were going to say something.
You're right on, Kevin.
Yeah.
Symbols.
Yes.
It's sending you signs, coincidences, feelings about something.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm somewhere in the middle of whatever, something very different, and it'll come to me.
Yes.
Why don't I call this person right now? And I think they could help me with something. Boom.
Yes.
And they're on the other line.
I mean, have
they're
a
on the
rule.
outside.
I have an absolute rule, and I obey it 100% now. I didn't always, but if I have a dream about someone, if someone pops into my head randomly, I reach out. Maybe it's a text. Usually it's a text, but I might send an email. I might even make a phone call. And I can't tell you how often that has happened. And it was one of those, like, I'm so glad you called, or it's so weird that you called because I was just thinking this.
Yep.
So I do that every time. So
that's
listen
great.
to your subconscious.
And it's a form of if you believe that on some level we're all interconnected, and there is also a thing where some people are very powerful receivers.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of receiving through intuition or whatever, and you're acting on it. And every time you act on it, it becomes stronger because something deep inside says, he's listening. I'm going to send more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's how it works.
Yeah,
we open up.
So we're getting close to time. I want to make sure we talk about where people can find you online. Now, I found this website. Is this you? Are we?
Yes,
that's
the right
me. Direction? So that's
me.
readsuzette.com. You have how many books do you have out?
At this time, I have 2: The Art of Column Writing and The Art of Opinion Writing.
And where are your columns appearing?
Well, I've been writing for the Patriot Ledger. If you Google Patriot Ledger Suzette Standring, a lot of my stuff will come up.
All right.
We should
have you on at some point just to talk about column writing, because that is something I've always been. I've done columns. I had several columns in the past, newspapers and blogs, etc. But I'm always interested in talking to people about that. We could probably go off on that tangent for a while. And
especially with the explosion of bloggers. I mean, everybody's blogging. How do you differentiate between a blog post and a column?
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry,
ahead,
Kev.
Jim.
I was just going to ask, when are you planning to get the novel out? Is that not to put you on the spot, but it sounds like
I'm halfway through now. I'm halfway through now, and I've just made some. I'm creating some pivotal events that sends everything in motion.
Okay.
So we'll see. I really gotta put myself into
you get your come on, subconscious, kick in here. I need a plot twist.
Right.
All right. Well, everybody, make sure you check Suzette's work out at readsuzette.com. That's a great domain name, by the way. It's like it's like a call to action as well as a destination.
Oh, well, thank you, Kevin.
I got to go register readkevin.com.
Someone will buy it and then charge you too much for it.
Yeah, no one heard that. No one rush out and buy that before I have an opportunity to. Anything else you want to throw in before we, anything you want to promote or anything you want to offer anybody? Or
I would just say that it's been so much fun to be here, and I am really excited about Draft Digital because I've made the decision that when I do publish my book, it's going to be through you guys. I love it. Love what you're doing.
And I would just like to
end right there.
I got to publicly apologize to Suzette because I think it was back in December of last year, about a year ago, when you first reached out to me. Like, hey, the National Society of Newspaper Columnists is having their conference again. We're all going to get together again finally after COVID. Can you do it? And that's when the Draft Digital Smashwords merger talks were just starting to kind of come together.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, I want to be there, but I don't know if I can yet. And she's like, well, why not? Like, why don't you know? I'm like,
fantastic job. I'm telling you, it was so revelatory. It was wonderful. I'm sold.
We want to convince all those columnists that they should be publishing.
That's what I'm going to do.
You have tons of work. You should definitely publish.
I'm just sorry I had to string you along for so long without a defense.
Hey, that was like corporate secrecy at the time. I totally get that. I totally get that.
All right. Well, Suzette, thank you so much for being a part of the show. And this was a great interview. And I'm seeing all kinds of comments about how interesting it was, and everyone wants to see you come back. So we'll definitely have to make that happen. We'll do a guided meditation one day. We'll do that.
Oh, yeah. I'll do that.
I think that'd be
great.
I would totally love that. Thank you so much. It really was wonderful to be with you today.
Absolutely.
So good to have you here, Suzette.
Thank you, Jim, for hold on. Let's not rush out the door just yet. We're going to say our goodbyes. But everybody else, everybody watching, thank you for tuning in. Make sure that you tune in every week. We do these every week. We're probably going to take a little break over the Thanksgiving holiday, but you're probably safe in tuning in. Make sure you bookmark d2dlive.com so that you know when these are happening. You see a little schedule of events there. And then as far as everything else, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe everywhere that you find this. And that's it. That's all the technical stuff. So we're gonna roll on out. Thanks again, everybody, for being a part of the show.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
I had so much fun.
Had a blast. Take care, everybody.
Take care, Suzette.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.